Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another review of yet another Playwright repository. My own personal repository, which I've built specifically for this purpose of this video, and mainly for small and medium-sized businesses, such as startups, for example, for web applications, specifically for web applications, should I say. So yeah, if you want to watch another video, go check that out. I got it there's a huge vid regarding the comprehensive Playwright setup and live coding session, which is about like 1.5 hours long. And if you don't want to do that, here's probably the quickest version of them all. Alright, so let's start from the very basics here. So we got the package.json, we got all the modules, we got all the commands right here. Some of them launch the end-to-end tests on any given env, some of them launch API tests on the same envs, and then we got the configuration. So basically this is a two-level configuration, which has the root config, which defines the projects, which defines some common timeouts, which defines the reporters. We're gonna get to that in a second, and basically defines other logic and properties such as videos and screenshots, and also traces, which are gonna be recorded if a test fails. Yeah, but I made them fail like on purpose, so yeah, haha, how clever, whatever. Yeah, so this is the root config, and here we got the second level, or a child config, which inherits the properties of the base config right here. And yeah, it's got some specific like timeouts given, which is dependent upon the env. It's got another stuff like, properties of the web browser, arguments, like launch options, they're in their name here. And a bunch of other stuff, which is not a lot. And, which is enough for, like a starter pack. You can branch off of this at any given time, or modify that. Yeah. So another thing worth mentioning is that the root config allows us to launch the tests on any given env via the .env npm package. This package is, the logic which allows us to do that actually is stored within the global setup param, which looks into the global setup.ts module. Let's take a look at this stuff. So yeah, here's this thing. It's a single async method which accepts the full config as an argument. And yeah, and it's like based upon the condition of which env we are running it against, right? So it's gonna be looking at the process env, test env, environmental variable, which is basically an argument when you are sending it, when the command is executing the one from these. So yeah, if you take a look at this is this parameter, right? It can be either staging or prod, but it can be any other in your case, in your specific case, in your specific given project, right? So let's go back to the global setup. Yeah, and it just takes this, accepts this env name as a variable, as an argument, I'm sorry, and it kind of concatenates this string with this given argument, right? So, and then it like .env. Let's say for example it's stage, right? It's gonna take a look at the stage.env, grab all the environmental variables from here, and set them up as the as the environmental variables. How cool! And the same is gonna happen in CI, but with the quite with a bit of adjustments, and yeah, we'll get there. Don't worry about that. Okay, so this is as far as configuration goes. So the next thing is, of course, how do we structure our test data? And the most important component here is the page object, or like page objects. I prefer stick to the best practices, one which is is mainstream stuff. It's like using the page objects in your tests. And how do I do this? So let's go to the pages folder. Here I got my page objects, basically, or like classes, which each class represents a given page. You can also call those modules, like whatever. It doesn't really matter how you call them, because it doesn't change the fact of what it does. And I also have the APIs right here. This is specifically for the API tests. This is a template, but it doesn't matter because it uses like the same approach as the page objects. With a slightly difference is that I do not call these API objects, I just call it like APIs. You may call it whatever the hell you want. It doesn't matter. Alright. Let's get back here. Yeah, so I got all these pages. Let me open something right here. So yeah, at first I got the page which is like page actions. I call it page actions because it represents, you know, the most common actions that you can do within your app, or like within, not within your app, but within, you know, any given web interface, or most of them, right? So it's got all the commonly used, you know, interactions with the web page, such as, you know, like open URL, like wait for URL, you know, wait for element states, or like wait for when it becomes visible or invisible, enabled, editable, and, you know, and so on and so forth. Like click element, click, force click, you know, center click, you know, fill it with text, press some given key on a keyboard, like emulate that stuff, you know, and so on and so on and so forth. There's a lot of useful stuff here, so I urge you to investigate this if you wanna use this stuff on your project. All right. So this is kind of like a base class. I mean, like, yeah, the base component. We and it's being like extend, like every other page object is gonna extend this base one, because I want to be able to use the actions, the common actions within you know, any given page. So the page locators are gonna be unique per page, and these methods are gonna be used like everywhere. They're gonna be like available everywhere. And yeah, so this is like an example of this. So it extends, like the class main page extends page actions right here. Then we got the selectors, then we got the methods, which actually, like, as you can see, like this open URL, right, or this click element, or this wait for element. So these are like the methods from the base class. Okay, and then I also got the page manager utility in the utils folder right here. So what this thing does is kind of import like all of these pages into this module, and then I export the page manager as a class. All right, so I declare it as a class right here, and I use the get keyword here to like kind of, you know, declare all these methods per page. One method equals one page right here, and inside this method I return the new instance of this class. For example, right, if we take the main page, for example, right, so return the new instance of the main page object. So within the spec, it's gonna initialize this stuff. And so, like, finally, this stuff can be used globally, right? So let's take a look at this example spec code. So if you take a look at here, let's say we have a step which, you know, navigates to sign up form on the website. And so like what does this page manager help me with, right? How does that help me? So if I would not have this utility right here, I would need to, you know, import all of these, or, you know, just some of these like modules or page object modules, right? I would have to import them within a spec, within each spec. So like which would like make it less comfy, you know, and more like forgettable, and, you know, less readable in terms of when I have to refactor my code. Then I have to kind of go through all the specs. Imagine having like several hundred tests within the test suite. So yeah, this stuff allows me to chain the methods of any given page within like any given spec without like explicitly importing those modules within a spec. So like an example would be something like if I didn't have the page manager, I would import like main page right here, then initialize the main page somewhere in the beginning of the test, and then like chain off of it to use some specific methods of this page. But instead I kind of, you know, just use the page manager, and I chain off of it with the main page, and then I chain off of the main page, you know, calling the click register link method off of it. So yeah, this just adds one extra step here, but it's not as complicated. All right, now let's take a look at the example spec, which is an end-to-end spec, which has some UI interactions within it. All right, so I tend to keep to the strict format that Playwright provides, with a little bit of customizable adjustments. So this is just like test describe, test hooks, the actual tests, and steps within the tests. Right, so nothing fancy, nothing new here. The only thing which has changed is the step definition, and, you know, yeah, and the test definition has also been customized. So like naturally these two methods are like Playwright natives, but I had to customize them a little bit just to be able to use the page manager within those methods. and do a little bit of, just system login, and, async awaits some, like edit some logic there as well. So I'm not gonna, explain too much around here. This really doesn't matter that much. It just helps you use the page manager. I think this is the most important right here. Okay, so yeah, I got some hooks here, like before each, and then I tend to use the test data, or in this case it's user data, but you can call it whatever, like per spec. If it's not common, of course. There is, let's say, there is a larger team working on the test repository with the automation test. Yeah, then of course we're gonna have some code conventions and shit, but this is not the case. And since it's not the case, I tend to keep the test data like within the spec right here, so that it can be easily accessed and yeah, and modified if needed, like per any given specific scenario. So some of it is static, most of it is static, some of it is dynamic, such as username, for example. So yeah, and then I have the steps, and as I've mentioned earlier, when I declare the, I'm passing the page manager right here within the hooks and within the tests methods, so I am able to use the page manager and chain off of it like within the test or within like my test. So yeah, in this case I got a couple of steps right here. One of which navigates to the sign up form, another one signs up, and I fail this test on purpose, just for to be able to show you how the HTML reporting works in CI. But we'll get to that. We're almost there actually. So yeah, as I've mentioned, like this is a page manager, then I chain off of any given page, and then I chain off of that page. I'm like calling some existing method out of this specific page, or this specific page, doesn't really matter. In this case, this is like the new user sign up. Yeah, let's get back to it. Okay, so basically this is the spec. Now, speaking of API specs, here I got, like in test API, get Bitcoin price. I got a simple get method, which I've like described with the help of the Axios library right here. So actually, what it does, it just gets the Bitcoin price, has the base URL from the .env file, and then it's just, yeah, so it gets the response out of it, out of this request. It returns the response, stores it in the constant right here, and since it's a get request and it doesn't have any headers, so this is gonna be like the simplest thing like possible or imaginable. So yeah, it's got a bunch of assertions out here, so if you want to check that out, feel free to check that out actually, right? And yeah, it's got like different assertions like regexes, data types, status codes, for each. Yeah, so pretty neat stuff. And Playwright is able to do all of it. Yeah, so basically there's nothing else to say regarding the API specs. Well, personally I consider APIs to be more simple than end-to-end. Since it's just data exchanging, you just gotta understand the logic behind it. When in UI it's more complicated because some things may glitch, some things may not work for whatever reason, and it's not always the case with the API. Okay, finally we are looking at the CI/CD setup and configuration. So in the terms of repository code, I got two YAML files which describe the GitHub actions logic within, and one of which is for staging, another is for production. But it can be, as I've mentioned many times before, it can be whatever the hell you want it to be. So yeah, let's go to the GitHub actions or GitHub workflows. Okay, so here we are in the workflows of this repo. Yeah, so as I mentioned here, you can see the staging test, prod test, and this is the page, is build deployment. I'm gonna tell you about that in a bit. So speaking of staging tests, let's go here and let's check some, let's check some run which has failed like most recently. So as you can see, it's got a bunch of like steps right here. Let me close this for a second. So it sets up jobs, lists all the end variables, but this is just for, for the sake of it. Now, I'm sure like in a real organization, you gotta keep that secret somewhere. Like in AWS or whatever. Then it checks out repo, installs node dependencies like Playwright, creates the .env configuration file with all the environmental variables just as it is locally right here. So in case of the GitHub, let me show you how this shit works in case of the GitHub. So you gotta go somewhere to the secrets and variables, I guess actions. Then you got the secrets, and then you have like one secret which is config prod, another one for staging, and the values, I'm not able to show you the values of it because GitHub masks them out. And you know, the sake, like the goal of it is to make you understand how this shit works. So basically, like, you have the config prod, and the value of this config prod secret is everything that you have, let's say, within this .env prod. So not a single variable, but the whole contents of this file. And same goes for staging. And then when this .env file is created, let me just show you here, somewhere around here. Yeah, so it just takes this secret out of GitHub repo and just writes it down to the file. You know, like creating this file like remotely, so you have the same configuration as locally. Then it runs the end-to-end tests. I made it skip the API test for the sake of this demo, and deploys the HTML report in case of failure, right? So if there was some failures, or there were some failures in the test run, it's just gonna publish, like, it's gonna generate the artifacts such as screenshot, trace, and video, and this is only in case of failures. And it's gonna take all these artifacts and just publish them like on a static GitHub web page, which is like this service is called like GitHub Pages. So you're gonna be able to access that there, and you can set the custom path on where it's gonna publish that. It's just the domain is the GitHub. So yeah. The long story short, here this step, and all these steps are reflected. Well, not reflected, but described within the YAML files. And also I got a custom Slack message, one about success, another one about failure, another one like about cancellation. So let me just show you this piece. Okay, so yeah, here's an example of such Slack alert. Here you can see like the test suite, the name of test suite, which has failed, and there's a couple of links and user mentions. So this is all customizable, it's all okay, it's all good. So you can either view logs, which is going to redirect us basically to the thing that we have been overviewing like for the last few minutes, and we can view the HTML report. And to view the HTML report, you'll be redirected to this, to the GitHub Pages static hosting page, and yeah, this is gonna be like the list of your tests which have failed. You can click on these to expand it, and see the step which failed, see the whole like step sequence right here, see the screenshot which is attached on the step that is failed, or on the last page, like the page state which was shown the last before the test failed. Then we got the trace. We can open the trace right here, and we can check the network logs. This is like extremely useful for the devs if you want to describe a bug or some defect or whatever, or localize that shit. So yeah, and also there is like console logs out here, which you can, expandable, like, and viewable. Some errors right here, and yeah, and attachments, but we already have them, so it's not like needed. And yeah, the most comfy part of this and the most useful part of this is that you can actually, this is like a memory lane, so to speak, and this is like a snapshot of page on any given step, right? As you can see, like the state of the page changes, fields are filled, and whatever. So yeah, this is extremely useful tool, as much as Cypress I can only imagine, right? Yeah. So I guess that's it. Same thing goes for prod, and that's it. That's it for the overview of this repo. Thank you for watching, and feel free to use that stuff wherever helps you, right? Cheers. Bye-bye.